Documentaries? Yeah, no thanks. Boring. Or biased and inaccurate, incomplete. Yeah, no thanks. Just stick to books or something, I don't know. And pictures. Okay. Teaching with documentary films is actually really amazing. There's some wonderful ones out there that do a great job with their storytelling, and they offer a much more immersive experience than your typical books and pictures. They're really good with capturing our learners' attention. They're amazing at helping our students remember more information because they engage so much more of the senses. But despite all those wonderful things about teaching with documentaries, it's still not perfect, right? First of all, some films really are just incredibly boring. It's just hard to sit through them when they're so slow. And then second, it is really good that it can pack so much information in a short amount of time, but in a way that's also really bad because it's a lot of information. How do you sift through that and navigate through that, or just sit back and process it all? And then on top of that, not all the information is aligned to your learning goals. You may not even need all of it. It might just be some parts that you need, and the rest is just like, oh, it's nice to have, but not necessary, and might just take up some necessary time that you need for other things. Then here's a big one. They can be so biased. And it's scary, right? When you don't even know what you don't know and you're not aware of it. Like you're watching something and you pause for a minute and think, wait a minute, are they pulling a Jedi mind meld on me? Like, am I being manipulated, right? It's so scary nowadays. You don't know what to watch anymore. They're really effective and good at employing manipulative tactics like card stacking and just hiding information from us, hiding different perspectives, and then also just using logical fallacies and emotions to get us to really join them in their little bandwagon. And then finally, watching a film, watching a movie can be just a very passive activity. That's the last thing you want your students to be, passive onlookers. You don't want them just sitting there like a vegetable or sitting there with drool dribbling down their face. It's not ideal. So yes, teaching with film is wonderful. Teaching with documentaries is wonderful, but it has all these bad things. And so today what we're going to do is try to figure out how to minimize those obstacles so that we can teach with films in a more effective way. So we're going to go through three stages. Three stages. So we're going to go through 3 stages. There's going to be the planning stage, there's going to be the viewing stage, and there's going to be the post-viewing stage. Okay, so first let's go through the planning phase. You really want to make sure in this phase that you have your learning goal, not just a topic, not just like, oh, the gold rush. Well, what about the gold rush? Are you going to talk about like the political effects of it, or more social, right? Economic? It's really important to narrow this down. It can't just be everything. Have a specific theme that you want the kids to see, maybe like, and to come to a conclusion about. That's going to really help you figure out what film to pick in the first place, right? It's going to help you just narrow down to the right film. And then in addition, it's going to help you figure out, well, do you need to show the whole film, or do you just need to show snippets of it? Or maybe you need to show snippets of multiple films. It's really helpful to have your learning goals for that. Okay, so let's go through the planning phase if you need to show the whole film. If you need to show the whole film, you're not just gonna sit back and press play and do it all in one sitting. These are very long, and it does require a lot of discussion. You don't want to just be sitting back, pressing play, and then that's it. What I like to do if I decide to show the whole film, is to have checkpoints or cutoff points. Okay, we're just going to watch 30 minutes of it today, or we're going to stop at this particular place where maybe it's a cliffhanger or a really important point. And then like design a question around that, and then figure out how you're going to review it the next day or the next time you come back to it. And then if you're going to watch just snippets of the film, then it's good to know that just because they're presented in a particular order by the documentary, you don't have to show it in that order. You can reorder it and even group them in a more intentional way that will serve your learning goal. Likewise, same thing if you're going to be showing snippets from multiple films. So just keep that in mind. So once you decide what films to watch, if you're going to watch the whole thing or just parts of it, the next thing to do in the planning phase is to prepare the viewing guide. Make sure you have good questions that aren't just recall questions, but good comprehension questions, as well as questions that advance the learning goal, right? A lot of analysis and helping them look at the pattern. Another really great thing I love to add in my viewing guides is just analyzing for bias and accuracy and for logical fallacies and propaganda that the filmmaker might be using to help tell their story and to help impact the viewer's emotions, right? Impact, such a timid word. Manipulate, what the filmmaker is using to manipulate our emotions and our thoughts. So it's great to have questions like that. So for example, some of the questions that I like to have are: 1, we critique or analyze the perspective in the film. Is it presenting a full picture, or is there a perspective that's missing? 2, we analyze the claim and the evidence that's presented in the film. Like, what is the filmmaker really trying to say, whether they say it directly or indirectly? And then what's the evidence? Does it connect, right? Are there any logical errors in there, or it's just flimsy connections? And finally, just analyzing how the filmmaker decided to share the story, what kinds of filmmaking methods they used to create the mood, to create the pacing, to set the tone. And I think that's just really important, because then we become more aware of how it impacts us. And especially in this day and age, that's relevant with almost everything that our kids are inundated with. Social media, just even regular fun movies can have really subtle messages hidden in there. So analyzing a film for those kinds of things will help them become more aware of how their own emotions or thoughts are manipulated by what they see in the movies and on the screen. For the viewing guide, it's also really nice to leave a space there for the kids to create their own questions. Maybe just have a list of topics to help them craft their questions about the film, okay? So yeah, those are the 3 main things for the planning. Is it 3? Let's see. You make sure you know the learning goals, okay? And with the learning goals, that helps you do the 3 things in planning, which is figuring out what movie or movies to watch. Are you going to show it completely or just partly, or parts of it, and then creating a good viewing guide. So now the second part is to actually go ahead and view the film with your students. And before you hit play, it's really important to start with the learning goal. Just say, this is our goal for today. I want you maybe to analyze the economic impacts or the social impacts of the gold rush, right? Like, or how did this affect sectionalism? Okay, so after you talk about the objectives, next you want to preview the film with the students. You can do this in several ways. You can just show a trailer, you can show like a movie poster for it, images you found on the internet, little clips, maybe just the first few minutes. You have options, okay? And once you show this to them, it's good to just have some discussion about like, oh, what they know about it, or what questions come up in their mind, right? Which would be a great segue into the viewing guide. And if you're going to have them generate questions on their own based on what they saw in the preview, which I highly recommend, this would be the time to do it. And then show them the rest of the viewing guide. Okay, these are the questions that you guys are going to be needing to look out for as you watch the film. Let's go ahead and read them together, or have them read it independently and maybe circle words that they think will be important, or circle words that they don't know. Okay? Speaking of words they don't know, the next thing then is to do some front loading. Talk about, define the vocabulary words, academic vocabulary words that you think they're going to need exposure to or background knowledge before they can really dive into the film, right? There are some concepts maybe that haven't been introduced that you can just introduce really quickly, and then their knowledge of it will deepen as they watch the film. But it's important to really be aware of words or concepts they need to know in order to really understand what's going on in the film. Next, and this is for you too, you're going to tell the kids that, hey, just because we're watching a movie doesn't mean it's popcorn time, sit back in your chairs and drool time, okay? You need to be ready to be pausing this movie and answering those questions and getting to work and thinking actively. Okay? You need to just make them aware, I'm going to pause the movie a lot. When I first started doing this with my kids, I got a lot of like, can you just press play, please? Like, stop. Okay, and it's good. I learned real fast. It's good to just give them a heads up before you even press play. Like, yeah, I'm going to be stopping this a lot. This isn't popcorn time. Okay? Next, you want to make sure you use closed captioning. It's really helpful for a lot of kids to just have the text there, right? Like that way, whatever they hear is being reinforced visually as well with what they're reading and what they're seeing happening in the film. It also helps when they don't know how to spell certain things. It's there for them to copy if they need to have it. Okay, so before you press play, it's also really good to just tell the kids, hey, you have the viewing guide, but anytime you have a question about the film, it's really good. It would be great if you just write it down on the side or somewhere in your notebook. Okay, these are things that are very important to do to encourage our students to be more independent thinkers, right? Like really encourage original thinking where they're coming up with the questions, and then later on you'll see it will really enrich the discussion, and it may even serve as a jumping board, a diving board for great research projects. So then when you actually go ahead and press play, right, initially, if you are just starting this out with your students, you will have the remote and you will press pause when it's time to pause based on the viewing guide, right? But what I like to do is, maybe I do that a couple of times, but then eventually I tell the kids, hey, you have the viewing guide, we previewed it. You guys are the ones that need to raise your hand and tell me when you think it's time to pause, or if you need me to pause or rewind. Just do that, okay? Because I might not do it, because maybe I'll be sitting back here grading papers or doing something else. Not really. But just, that way it puts the accountability on them, or it puts the responsibility on them to really be active, more active viewers and listeners in this experience. It's not just on you, right? They're full on like, this is me, okay? And eventually what I even like to do is I just give the remote to a kid that I trust and just tell them, hey, if you needed pause, just raise your hands, say pause please, and then Mark will go ahead and pause it for the rest of us, etc. And then what you'll see happening is really beautiful. When they do this and you just kind of take a back seat, then they start actually discussing ideas, right? Especially if it's a great film that's more provocative, they'll start discussing beyond the viewing guide, and it's really beautiful when that starts to happen. And now finally, you're done with the movie. Whew, right? And is that it? No, of course not. After the film, make sure you go ahead and really carve out some time to dive in and discuss that viewing guide and any questions that the kids may have had, and affirm any predictions, right? And also just discuss why things were the way they were and really dive into figuring out those any bias or missing perspectives, or just how the filmmaker presented evidence for their claims, right? Those are really important skills that we need to go back to over and over again with our kids. Any questions that were left unanswered, make sure you guys make a plan for how you're going to get the answers to those questions, whether it's extra research or maybe a great project for it later on in the unit or in the year. And then just circle back to the objective and say, okay, this was our goal. Remember our goal, it was analyze the impact of the gold rush on sectionalism. Well, what is our analysis? Like, how much did it impact it and how, right? How did this lead to sectionalism, or how did it not lead to sectionalism? Is it debatable? So yeah, I know that was a lot, but really great planning and just thinking through the details is going to give you a much more elevated experience when it comes to learning with films. And I hope that this has been helpful to you. If you found it helpful, please go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe for more teaching tips and tricks in the future. And I hope you have a blessed day today.